Whenever folks inquire about my origins, I mention Mapleton, Ohio, since it's simpler than gesturing toward a patch between a pair of riverside communities and spinning a lengthy tale involving endless cornrows, rumbling cargo lines, and a vast sky that might split wide like a gasping maw. Mapleton's the sort of town where summer air carries scents of steaming asphalt and freshly mown lawns, where the Independence Day procession circles the town square a couple of times just to stretch out the path. Our home was a sturdy brick structure with weathered green window covers and a veranda that perpetually tilted slightly leftward, much like a weary fellow slouching when he believes no one's observing. That slanted veranda served as the backdrop for my story's opening act. You're probably someone who views existence as a scripted drama, complete with scenery, prompts, and spectators. Though I don't always see it that way, occasionally I do. I'm the baby of the daughters. My sibling goes by Madison, yet emerging from my mom's lips, it always emerged gentler, akin to syrup gliding over the palate. Maddie, I'm Emma. From my mom's lips, my name came across as a warning. Ma. That subtle pivot smack in the center, snagging like a frame that's bloated from the humid warmth. Should you have wandered into our kitchen back when I was a kid, you'd have caught whiffs of overcooked coffee lingering on the heating plate, along with spice and laundry soap, as Mom tackled the ironing right there at the counter. The wall calendar stayed packed with jottings in her neat, blocky script: dentist visits, vaccinations, her shifts at the medical billing desk, tune-ups for Dad's pickup. Madison's special day got a container bursting with affection symbols and hype punctuation. Mine remained neat, marked by just one asterisk. Dad once sketched a cheerful grin, but Mom wiped it away and scribbled Madison's volleyball dinner timing right across it. Unless you've witnessed an erasure of your own doodled joy, it's tough to grasp how a minor incident can hit like an earthquake. At 6 years old, with Madison a year ahead, we both picked up biking in one single session. Dad gripped the rear of her frame and dashed along the pavement in his heavy boots that smacked the ground like cheering claps. She teetered a bit, then twice more, before steadying and zooming off, a rosy blur topped with streamers on the grips. I perched on the sidewalk edge, clutching my Navy cycle, and a headgear that nipped at my jawline. "Hold on, Em," Mom shouted, the sort of summons you'd give a store clerk while dashing off for forgotten groceries. "Just a moment, and we'll launch you." Madison whipped around the neighborhood like a shooting star. Upon her return, Dad hollered and smacked his palms together, declaring, "That's my champ! Catch that, Lind!" Mom chuckled and agreed she had. I remained seated, curling my feet to carve tiny crescents into the edge, forcing my expression to stay neutral. "Hang tight," Mom repeated. "Maddie, demo that fancy pivot for Dad." Twilight had settled in by the point anyone recalled my presence. The entry lamp flickered on. The bugs zeroed in on my legs as if checking a roster. Dad eventually trotted over, panting and thrilled, placing his broad palm midway down my back. "Okay," he announced. "Kiddo, time to pedal." We'd advanced past 8 residences before he released, and the instant he did, I barreled right into Mr. Pewett's shrubbery, since navigating shadows is impossible without prior guidance on the road's layout. Mom's giggle drifted my way, a form I'd come to fear. Dad remarked he ought to have observed my sister's technique. He added, "You constantly complicate stuff more than necessary. By age 9, I'd mastered gauging the atmosphere. A glance at Mom's clenched chin, the tilt of Dad's cap on the entry rack, the jumble of footwear near the rear entrance, and I'd sensed the evening's vibe. A fine evening involved Dad manning the barbecue, Mom refilling her white wine, and the power invoice going unmentioned. A rough one brought heavy silence, followed by excessive clamor. During those tough stretches, Madison would arrive at dinner spinning yarns effortlessly, nearly landing on the pupil board, her trainer praising her strong hits for someone so young, and our folks would glow as if freshly powered up. If I chimed in, my comments would slip right off the surface and hit the ground, and as we all know, once phrases land there, they're gathered and tossed without a proper glance. There was this one celebration. Allow me to paint the picture, as it's the type that sheds light on the rest. I was hitting 9. Mom whipped up a dessert, filling the entire dwelling with a cozy aroma of sweetness wrapped like a blanket. As she extracted it from the heat, her brow furrowed. "Darn," she muttered. "Red velvet, just like Maddie's." She voiced it as if caught off guard, despite it being the third consecutive occasion. "You enjoy red velvet as well, right, Em?" She'd commenced stirring the tangy icing by then, signaling the inquiry was mere politeness. I actually dislike red velvet. It has the flavor of a hidden truth, masquerading as cocoa. Still, I dip my head in agreement. For if you've grown into a particular sort of young lady, you realize that saying no baking couldn't ward off tempests. During the celebration, Mom carved out hefty portions for everyone and passed me a skimpy edge slice with barely any icing. Madison grabbed a pair, chuckling as she mentioned bulking up ahead of her workout. Once the candles appeared, there weren't as many as you'd imagine, just an even batch Mom had dug up from a cabinet. Madison edged nearer to me, so close I spotted the tiny golden flecks in her gaze. "Go for a huge wish," she challenged. "I want to feel truly noticed," I thought, then puffed. The haze twisted up toward the overhead bulb and faded away. In class, I held my own. More than that, really. I was the one who gouged faint marks into exam sheets from gripping the pencil too tightly. Instructors sent comments to my parents about my bookworm habits. Mrs. Caldwell allowed me to perch on the carpet and recite passages when the group got chaotic, since my tone stayed even like a ticking clock, calming the room like a gentle snowfall. Madison's educators dispatched reports too, though they carried a different vibe. Madison leads the pack. Madison's vibe spreads like wildfire. Madison requires space to sparkle. A B for her meant party balloons. An A from me earned just a quick head tilt from Dad across the report card. "Isn't that the norm?" he remarked, prompting me to tuck away my successes like polished pebbles from a stream. I'd pull them out and fiddle with them solo. You might assume I'm resentful. I'm not. Or, at least, not solely. I'm more of a meticulous chronicler of minor details. That's a key distinction. By junior high, the community felt tighter, like a garment warped from too many hot cycles in the machine. You couldn't shift without grazing someone else's tail. Madison's narratives loomed large, vivid, and space-hogging. Mine stayed tucked away, with boundaries I kept hidden. Other girls sought me out, those navigating corridors as if charting tomorrow's path, craving a listener who wouldn't cut in. At midday meals, we'd swap energy bars and experiment with cat eye liner via each other's screens. To an observer, we were merely teens with flaking polish and hidden truths. But if you tuned in, you'd catch how we sustained each other through the noise. Madison observed. She forever observed. Her stare prickled at the nape of my neck from the far side of the lunchroom. She resented me having what she lacked, even something basic like a spot at a table where I'd grin freely. Eventually, she approached, plunked her tray, and launched into a boisterous yarn about the coach, hinting at her future as team head. My pal offered a courteous grin, the sort ingrained in us for folks prowling the edges. Then Madison fixed on me. "Watch your company, Em. Mom mentions Kayla's folks allow guys over unsupervised." Kayla's face flushed crimson. A snap echoed inside me, not a fracture like bone, but more a split, like a luck bone. "That's a lie," I murmured, subdued. Yet Madison was already retreating, content, like she'd ignited a blaze and stepped aside to admire it. That evening at home, without glancing up from her pile of drugstore bills, Mom noted, "Your sibling claims you're mixing with a wild bunch." She delivered it flatly, like forecasting rain. Dad rustled his newspaper sharply, as if underscoring. "You don't need to emulate her," he tacked on, which struck me as ironic, since the reality was I couldn't mirror her no matter how I tried. Certain thresholds only unlock if another provides the passkey. After that, I avoided inviting pals over. The home had this strange habit of constricting around the girls I favored. Mom would adopt her soft interrogator tone. Dad posed queries that doubled as judgments. Madison would hush in a lurking manner, then, post-departure, claim my guest had swiped some trifle, A tube of gloss, a Carnival One trinket, a 10 spot from the counterpot, and my folks would side with her instinctively. Mom might murmur, "I'd rather not suspect, but an item's gone awry." And Madison spotted it initially. She'd exhale dramatically, and I'd witness my companion wither slightly before me and exit, arms wrapped tight. I'd muse, "I won't expose folks to pain here. I won't let them discover what I've long grasped." Instead, we claimed parks, cafes, and open-windowed rides. We traced our contours in borrowed territories. That's its own lesson. Entering high school cracked the place wide, akin to autumn cleaving a ripe melon. Juicy crimson, scattered pips, and sticky allure. Abruptly, cheer events, campus flags, and murmurs of aid packages filled the air. Madison landed a bow in a varsity sweater, reeking of aftershave and engine grease. Dad adored him. He'd thump the boy's shoulder at supper, as if pounding him into our fold. "Firm grip there," Dad would declare, appraising it like a vital stat. Mom glowed. I aimed for civility. I managed civility. I caught how Madison's gaze lingered on me whenever that boy chuckled at my quips. The initial guy who ever invited me on a date did so by the snack dispensers right after math class. He possessed a clumsy charm and this tick of sliding a palm along the nape of his neck whenever anxiety hit, which happened frequently. He blurted, "I think you're," then halted, as if summoning courage in your mind isn't the same as actually stepping up to the plate. He tried once more. "I like how you recite passages in literature class," he rushed out, like dumping contents from a pail. I agreed, because no one had ever praised my tone that way before. And there I remained, under the humming glow of the overhead lights, sensing a part of me unfurl, while another part coiled tight to guard that vulnerability. I had no desire to invite him over. Naturally, my mom demanded it. "If you're getting serious with anybody, we ought to meet him," she declared, as though familiarity itself were a blessing. The evening he arrived for pasta, greens, and herb-toasted slices, Madison materialized at the staircase landing in an outfit that hadn't hung in her wardrobe earlier that day. She draped herself over the railing like it was scenery in a production starring her as the star. Over the meal, she quizzed my date on his favorite tunes and shared giggles with him over some group I'd never encountered. As I rose to assist Mom with the cleanup, Madison trailed me to the sink and murmured, "He's adorable. Does he realize who you really are?" She skipped any grimace. She didn't need to. I froze in place. Out on the veranda afterward, my guy brushed my arm. "Your sibling shared plenty about you that seemed none of her affair," he noted. His expression held warmth mixed with confusion. "She mentioned you tend to envy quickly, that you pry into things." He paused to gulp. It didn't sit right. I felt a spark of affection for him right then. Not the enduring sort. More like the fleeting type you tuck away in a compartment, akin to a dried bloom. My folks trusted Madison's version, without question. Mom slid her spectacles lower on her bridge and scrutinized me as if adjusting a lens to sharpen my image. "I only aim to guide you towards smart decisions," she explained, the kind of phrase that mimics affection until you discern the unspoken layer, the bit implying you can't decide solo. Dad crossed his limbs and warned that fellows detect disorder in a young woman. "They exploit it," he added, "or bolt." The romance crumbled beneath all that scrutiny. It's tough to explore intimacy when your sibling pops up constantly, like an intrusive ad. Once it fizzled, Madison hovered in my threshold, her features brimming with faux concern. That struck me as the cruelest display yet. "Aw, sweetie," she cooed, almost like a soothing tune. "You'll meet somebody who matches your pace." I skipped inquiring what pace she imagined for me. I closed the panel. Here's the truth about occupying the overshadowed sibling spot in a compact dwelling. You figure out how to stash your strength in unexpected spots. I stowed mine within pages because no one monitors a female absorbed in texts. It mimics compliance. I hid it in those midnight cram periods when the home fell silent, save for the muffled deceptions drifting from a distant screen. I concealed it in a tomorrow I couldn't fully envision but sensed approaching, like a shift in the air. At the dining nook, I laid out flyers for universities, vocational courses, and grants I'd copied from the public archive. I scheduled my digging for times when Madison was absent and Mom pulled her overnight factory gig. Dad would pass by, spot the sprawl of documents, and mutter, "Don't rush things," as if optimism were impulsive, as if aspiration could saddle a household with burdens. Madison's higher ed chatter varied. It involved visits, fresh tops, and scents that evoked upscale entrances. Mom uttered terms like heritage and networks. Dad vowed, "We'll ensure it works for our Maddie." He delivered it with conviction. Unlike his vague, "we'll figure it out," tossed my way. I trained myself to file those "we'll see" remarks alongside the preserved petal in that hidden spot, retrieving them solely when I could face something delicate. During Sunday services, the way the parents glanced at Madison before shifting to me made me yearn for an upper level, despite Mapleton First Baptist lacking one. Madison exchanged grips and gathered accolades like jewelry. I arranged seats, served brew, and returned with the aroma of instant whitener clinging to my skin. After one teen fundraiser wash, a donor tucked a 20 into Madison's container and remarked, "You've got a bright path ahead." I observed how Madison's lips eased into a smile, how Mom's arm looped around her midsection. I carried my own canister back, barely filled, and tallied the sum alone in my space, murmuring the totals like invocations. You wonder about the instant when everything shifted. No isolated event existed, just a chain of subtle slopes. Then suddenly, I glanced around and grasped I'd been climbing steadily for ages. Yet a particular episode lingers, much like lingering tastes persist, well after the dish is cleared. It's the waning chill of my 11th grade term. The sugar tree out front bore a thin layer of frost coats each limb, revealing the tree's bare skeleton in stark honesty. Madison's back from her initial college term at that school we're not mentioning. Around here, uttering a name aloud just hands it the ammo to mortify you later. Mom's jotting down a shopping list for the market. Dad's zapping through TV stations, dismissing every show as dreadful. I'm stationed at the kitchen table amid a sprawl of paperwork. Grant forms, a personal statement prompting me to describe an obstacle and my triumph over it. "Listen," Mom blurts out abruptly, her voice feigning nonchalance like she's practiced it. "We've got to discuss something with you. Your sister's college fees, they're steep. We never saw the total coming. For you, we're considering a deferral, maybe work a bit, build up savings. We'll circle back once Maddie's finished her sophomore year. If finances improve, perhaps then." I've mastered steady breathing through any storm. I demonstrate it right there. Breathe in, breathe out. "A deferral," I echo. "It's not meant as discipline," Dad chimes in, "merely sensible." "I could look into loans," I counter, since I've researched it thoroughly. Got a binder tagged possibilities with a clip sharp enough to serve as a shank. Mom sets her pencil aside softly, like her upcoming words pack enough sting on their own. "Borrowing's a heavy commitment, sweetie, and you've got such a soft spirit. We hate the idea of you regretting a choice that haunts your future." She eyes Madison, ensuring the lines hit their mark. "We'll guide you on what truly matters when the moment arrives." Madison, borrowing one of my cardigans and making it seem custom-made for her, tilts her chin and grins like a feline plotting. "Plenty of solid gigs right here locally," she offers. "You could stash cash and sort out your true path. Higher ed doesn't suit everybody." It's remarkable how swiftly tension clouds a space. I recall the metallic tang in my mouth, the quiver in my fingers concealed by neatening documents. Opting for quiet, as if selecting a concealed blade. "Appreciate you all considering my situation," I reply, ever the daughter skilled at feigning thanks when trapped. Upstairs in my bedroom afterward, I arrange every document across the quilt and iron them flat like a ritual. I craft a composition starting thus. Some claim life's journey resembles ascending steps. For me, it's more like a rusty ladder bolted to the side of a building. I cover the sheet, I output it, I mail it off with postage and a hopeful plea. I've discovered the pleas that succeed for me aren't pleas to reshape others. They're requests for an exit that swings open gently. The season turns to spring, vibrant and bold. I stay focused. I weave achievement tassels into my routine like stitching. Weekends find me at the local pastry shop, infused with weekend vibes even midweek. The proprietor, a bereaved woman called Ruth, whose palms bear permanent dough dust, shares tales of her youthful days in the metropolis, of the fellow she adored, handy with repairs if granted patience, of acquiring this spot to immerse herself daily in the aroma of rising loaves. Folks imagine romance as a symphony, she remarks while plating pastries. But often it's merely repeating one solid gesture until it shapes a whole existence. The notification hits when I'm away, at the shop post-morning frenzy, with devices silent and Ruth inspecting the risen batches in the rear. I clean my palms, unlock my device, and spot it. A header in plain, straightforward terms. Complete funding award. Reality bursts like a fragile orb, then reassembles, but cozier now. The message includes lines I dreaded dreaming up. Costs waived, charges handled, housing allowance provided, congratulations. I slump onto a perch and chuckle, then clamp a palm over my lips since such glee mimics soaring. And in my world, soaring happens in secret. Ruth spots me and cups my face with her dusted hand. "Well," she queries, gaze sparkling. "I did it," I murmur. "Ruth, I actually did it." She skips claiming foresight. Instead, "Naturally you did. So, what pastry masterpiece shall we whip up to announce it?" I inform my folks by sharing the update online before anything else. This isn't spite, it's safeguarding. In our household, broadcasting publicly acts as shielding. Retracting joy proves tougher once the community has folded it into their day. My update stays straightforward, no boasting. I type, "deeply thankful." I type, "eager to dive into studies." I type, "shout out to the educators, patissiers, and book guardians who believed in me." Replies sprout and accumulate. Mom rings, her respiration quickened a touch. This is huge," she exclaims. She registers thrill for precisely 5 beats before the tonal pivot, from elation to planning, like shifting from pause to motion without pause. "You certain it's legit?" Scams abound. Dad's timbre booms from off mic, enough to distort the line. "Probe the details," he insists. There's always the small print. Madison never phones. That evening, as I return home, she's perched on the sofa, her complexion pale as storm clouds. She observes me moving through the space. "You were fortunate," she remarks. I stay silent. She utters it again, like examining the phrase in front of a looking glass. "You were fortunate." Part of me itches to dismiss it with a shoulder lift and accept the term. Fortune carries a gentle ring. It absolves. It resembles a dandelion seed head. Yet abruptly, recollections flood in of each evening at the dining table, each method I mastered to steady my breathing amid efforts to disorient me regarding the room's chill. I toiled, I murmur softly, and indeed, fortune plays a minor role always. Madison offers a grin like the one you give a pet you're not fond of. "Anyway," she adds, rising, "it's not as if you're heading to an elite university." Whatever, she infuses whatever with the full disdain a young woman can cram into a single word. I ought to mention that I departed for university that August, and a fresh existence unfolded like a freshly unveiled pain, which holds true. Yet that's for another time. Crucial here is the atmosphere in the home following the award announcement. My mom navigates the spaces cautiously, as though aiming to avoid jostling the furnishings. My dad steers clear of me initially, then swings to excess, arriving with a convenience store pastry topped by a lone stripe taper and placing it on the surface as a gesture of reconciliation. Madison amplifies her volume, then mutes it, then blasts it anew. The residence itself appears to pause, as if absorbing that we're on the cusp of encountering altered selves, and it wavers between cheering us on or clinging to its accustomed groans. This marks the final moment prior to the subsequent segment. It's a Tuesday evening with crickets chirping away. I'm out on the veranda, surrounded by a pile of gratitude cards, scripting in tidy cursive. My dad emerges and positions himself next to me, gazing down the road like it holds solutions. "I'm pleased with you," he states, eyes averted. The phrase feels odd on his lips. It snags on the familiar snag where my name typically hung. You're managing okay." I glance his way, and briefly, he's the fellow chasing a rosy bike, and briefly, I'm the child pedaling into a shrubbery under cover of night. "Thanks," I reply sincerely. From within, Madison chuckles at whatever's on her device. A chuckle akin to a chime eager to shed its roll. My mom summons her by name, the call drifting featherlight. I slip yet another card into its casing. I seal the edge like a vow. As I eventually retire, I draw the shades and regard the maple's stark frame, pondering Ruth's words. At times, affection means performing the identical positive deed repeatedly until it shapes an existence. For me, that deed is straightforward. Persist in selecting myself in the tiniest manners possible until someday the selections resemble a portal swinging wide. The portal will swing open, but beforehand come a ceremony, a scheme, and my sibling in attire that doesn't suit her. Yet that's, as folks put it, a separate tale. The initial stroll across Riverton State's grounds made me sense someone had boosted the vibrancy of everything. The masonry structures shone a richer crimson than any structures from my hometown. The turf on the central green was so vivid, it seemed brushed on fresh that morning. Learners lounged on spreads, perusing books, chatting, dozing, and nobody appeared to scan for the harsh judgment from others. I clutched my award documents against my side like a buoy and mused, "This is the flavor of breath." My residence hall chamber sat on the third level of a structure predating my grandparents' union. The heater rattled come cold months. The panes jammed in heat. My companion in the room, a young woman from Charlotte called Sierra, affixed twinkling strings over our sleeping spots and ignited lavender aroma sticks that likely broke regulations, but evoked renewal. That inaugural evening, she collapsed on her bedding and queried, "So, what's your background?" I parted my lips, then closed them. My background was too extensive for that instant. Rather, I offered, "I enjoy reading aloud." She beamed. "Perfect. You can rouse me during those 3 a.m. essay sessions." Liberty rang with a particular resonance for me. It echoed in my solo strides down corridors where anonymity reigned. It clicked in my campus card, granting library access at the witching hour. It pulsed in my chest when I lifted my hand during lectures, and an instructor noted, "Solid observation, Emma." I mastered the transit routes. I discovered the zest of falafel from the vendor by the lab facility. I realized the dining hall meals improved when savored beneath foliage. I rang my folks on Sundays initially. Mom inquired about my meals. Dad probed on my marks. Madison joined via loudspeaker occasionally, her tone like a feline murmuring from hiding. "Still single, huh?" She'd tease. "Don't delay forever, sir. Campus life's the sweet spot." I'd chuckle softly and respond, "Time will tell." Gradually, I dialed less frequently. I dispatched cards in lieu, scribbling bits on climate, lectures, the chipmunks in the trees near I remember those sprawling university lawns that edged right up against your footwear. The fewer details they grasped, the more room I had to exhale freely. That's how I crossed paths with Daniel in an off-campus cafe, the sort featuring eclectic cups and shelves of unread volumes lining the walls. He occupied a spot in the corner, laptop open, expression suggesting he'd caught a trio of punchlines already and was primed for another. His gaze had this quality, not dissecting you like a riddle, but inviting your tale as if eager to hear it unfold. We kicked off chatting about the novel clutched in my hands, Toni Morrison's Sula, and before we knew it, 2 full hours had slipped by without a pause. As he rose to go, he dropped. Next week, same spot. Utterly effortless, like breathing. It evolved into our steady beat. Lattes, dialogues, the gradual weaving of our worlds together. Daniel stood in stark contrast to Madison's parade of suitors. He never pressured or measured up against others. He truly heard you out. In moments of frustration, he'd hush and mull things over prior to responding. When joy hit, his chuckle rang out like a gate swinging wide. Pursuing a degree in political science, he also pulled evening shifts at the school's guard station, dubbing it compensated observation of humanity. He confessed a fondness for rhythms and behavior, predicting folks' next moves. During films, he'd often nail the conclusion ahead of time. Not mind reading, he once remarked over a flawed ceramic cup, just observant. It hit me then that I'd always been watchful myself, yet purely out of necessity. For him, it stemmed from genuine interest. That's the key distinction. We let things unfold unhurriedly. Strolls defined our outings. In his cramped flat with a tilted range, we'd whip up spaghetti. We'd delve into our upbringings and dream of the kinships we'd craft someday. As I shared Madison's saga cautiously, fragment by fragment, he held back from cutting in or dispensing wisdom. Instead, he murmured, "That's heavy," and clasped my fingers. One evening, marking our year milestone, we lounged on the university stairs beneath a starlit canopy resembling grains of salt dusted over dark fabric. "Ever think of returning?" he ventured, alluding to Mapleton. I replied I'd only consider it for those who'd shown me warmth. He inclined his head. "Folks speculate on handling scenarios like yours," he noted. Me, I step up and act. A subtle grin followed. Not intimidation, just my nature. That marked the initial spark where I envisioned him as a potential lifelong partner. Our engagement arrived subdued, solely between us. No fanfare, no festive trappings. It mirrored easing off a burdensome load you'd shouldered so long its weight had faded from notice. We concurred the ritual itself mattered little. Our focus lay on stashing funds for adventure, perhaps traversing Europe or railroading through the Rockies. Yet scanning the invitees revealed his relatives dispersed nationwide, while mine remained rooted in Ohio. Opting for a local affair streamlined the arrangements. If we host it back home, Daniel suggested, we can dedicate extended breaks to organizing. Nothing fancy. Apprehension gnawed at me over presenting him to my folks. Time away had mellowed certain recollections, smudging their sharpness akin to a faded snapshot. One side of me hoped for transformation in them. The other recognized the futility. I warned Daniel against solitary time with them. He met my eyes, brows arched. "As if I haven't been gearing up," he quipped. He revealed a compact voice device tucked neatly into a pocket. "For proof," he added smirking, "or memories." He ventured to see them solo, while I hovered restlessly in our place. Upon his return much later, his gaze sparkled with that post-thrill exhilaration some get from amusement rides. "Sweetheart," he began, "you'll be stunned." Then he unpacked it all. How my parents had drawn him into a seat, Madison teetering on a chair's edge in a pristine summer frock as if practicing her spotlight moment. They'd proposed funding the nuptials with a single stipulation: Madison parading ahead in bridal attire during my ceremony. Tradition, they claimed, Daniel relayed, but it screamed daytime drama. From his pocket came the gadget, brandished triumphantly. "It's captured entirely." The space seemed to sway beneath me. I'd anticipated their twist to center the event on Madison, yet this surpassed imagination. Rage didn't surge first. Rather, a vacant ache settled in, urging me to collapse and fixate on the overhead until the whirl eased. Daniel dropped to one knee before me, palms steady on my legs. "Listen," he urged, "this opens doors. we decide our countermove. Evenings found us huddled at the dining nook, brainstorming schemes. A few veered audacious, phantom sights, misleading cards, intricate jests. Daniel's sibling, the reliable sort in their clan, cautioned via call about legal pitfalls and practicalities. If revenge calls, he advised through the line, execute it neatly, make it untraceable. In time, we honed in on the most straightforward tactic: feign acceptance, allow them the illusion of command, then engage guards to bar Madison's entry. Sure, it'd sting as payback, but chiefly safeguard. It promised me a single untainted day. Daniel nailed his role without a hitch. He returned to my folks and assured them he got where they were coming from. He mentioned how I hated arguments and probably wouldn't kick up a fuss if caught off guard. He subtly pointed out that, given my track record with guys, they were just trying to steer me right, flipping their earlier criticisms back on them. He proposed they cover some add-ons to make the offer more appealing. They swallowed it whole. As for Madison, he noted, she practically bounced with delight. He ensured no part of the scheme ever hit paper. They bought every bit of it. In the meantime, we leveraged their oversight to level up all the details. We'd sample the budget menu item first. Then Daniel would let out a heavy breath in front of Madison and remark, "Too bad we can't swing the nicer choice." That would prompt Madison to insist our parents foot the bill for the premium version, ensuring her big moment felt truly spectacular. We pulled the same move with the blooms, the photographer, and even the table coverings. We dubbed it payback in feelings. Daniel was thrilled. One evening, he admitted he never imagined getting pumped about floral setups. But seeing them shell out for the arrangement you really desire. Perfection. I, who'd once eyed a simple city hall ceremony to stash cash for our getaway, now stood in try-ons for a gown that flowed like liquid silk. My parents had nudged me toward an outfit that just didn't fit, but since my mom had messaged about it, I had the evidence to push back. Daniel feigned support for Madison's idea to sabotage my dress and shove me into theirs. "They're handing us the whole plot," he chuckled, shaking his head. Throughout it all, Madison deployed her typical ploys. She texted Daniel. She accidentally grazed his arm. He played the part of someone torn to push the narrative, but stayed firmly in bounds. I, who'd always dodge fights, now chuckled at the idea of being cast as overbearing and possessive. "Amp it up," I urged him. "Paint me as a total monster." He obliged. It paid off. They avoided committing anything to text or email. They figured they were outsmarting me. Yet we were crafting a ceremony funded by them, shaped by us. Come spring, it was all locked in. We secured the spot. We arranged protection. We mapped every second. We even looped in a buddy, an honorary attendant tasked with sending me alerts and stirring up diversions if things heated up. Daniel practiced his baffled and furious expression in front of the glass. I worked on steady breaths. The evening before the big day, we crashed at a cozy lodge just beyond the city limits. Daniel stretched out next to me, drawing shapes on my hand. "Tomorrow," he murmured, "is all yours, whatever goes down." I gazed at the lazily spinning ceiling blades and reflected on all the paths I'd been told weren't mine. This door, though, would swing wide, and Madison. She was over at my parents' place, easing into her pilfered gown, practicing a procession that was doomed to fizzle. The spark was struck. Wedding morning broke with that rare quiet of early autumn, right before the heat intensifies. The lodge carried scents of brewed coffee and crisp linens. A gentle wind rustled the maples outside, like fingers combing through locks. I stirred before the buzzer and just lay there, attuned to Daniel's soft inhales. Briefly, I pictured a routine morning. No plots, no baggage, just a couple on the verge of vows. Then I flipped over and murmured, "We set." He cracked an eye, flashed a smile, and replied, "Always have been." We'd run through it all. The guard, a sturdy, level-headed guy called Carl, who could pass for a comic book hero on the side, knew his cues. Our ally inside would hover by the entry, device at the ready for real-time pings. The attendants were briefed to trail my dad's cues without looping me in, to sell the facade. Dad imagined he'd stage a dramatic unmasking. Truth was, he was setting off an entirely different scene. At the site, the AC droned over the buzz of anticipation. The space bloomed with arrangements, gentle tunes, and folks settling in. I slipped into my attire gradually, relishing the material's hush against me. Glancing at my reflection, I barely knew the woman staring back. Not from the outfit, but from the serenity in her features. For so long, I'd been the one who recoiled. Now, I appeared rooted, unshakable. A notification pinged. "She's approaching. 5 mins out." I let out a slow breath. Follow-up buzz. "Dad's by the front. Tune-up imminent." It was aligning perfectly. I lingered in the holding area, fingers linked. Peering through the door's gap, I spotted attendees fidgeting, leaflets waving like skittish wings. Dad gave the signal to the planner. The processional melody rose, the portals parted, and it was I who stepped forward. Dad's gaze jerked upward, jaw dropping. In that instant, he peered past me, anticipating Madison in her stolen ivory. But there stood only Carl by the threshold, solid as a barrier, scanning the roster. Dad's cell chimed. He checked the screen. It was her. He muttered a phrase, something abrupt. The doorman appeared and moved out of the way, stranding me right at the doorway. Murmurs rippled across the venue like a breeze through fields. Our ally, embracing her role, announced it clearly so all could catch her words. What was his intention? "This wasn't meant for you." She rushed toward the foyer, stirring up a wave of intrigue. Attendees craned their necks. Rumors circulated. I drew in some air and started my procession down the walkway. My spouse's dad, positioned as a stand-in, advanced and extended his elbow. His gaze held kindness. "Time to tie the knot," he whispered. I grinned and linked arms with him. Down at the altar's edge, Daniel stood ready, his expression masking concern for the onlookers, while his stare gleamed solely in my direction. "You're nailing it," he breathed as I arrived. "Totally Oscar level." We exchanged promises amid a subtle hum of conjecture. Folks drifted away and came back, devices vibrating with news from the front area. My folks stayed away. The ritual pressed forward regardless. As the celebrant declared us wed, cheers surged like ocean waves, blended with ease and wonder. Afterward, during the gathering, the menu and beverages we'd selected, elevated by Madison's stipulations, circulated abundantly. Visitors swayed to music, chuckled heartily, and offered me particularly sincere felicitations, seemingly compensating for the spectacle they'd observed. I spotted Daniel dropping his facade and beaming by the dessert table. "Totally justified every moment," he remarked. The complete tale emerged gradually, piece by piece, forming a vivid pattern. The attendant at the gate informing Madison she appeared to be in the incorrect spot, since another bride was present. My dad attempting to intimidate him with law enforcement. The doorman serenely suggesting he summon them. Our companion showing up precisely then, shouting and delaying, sparking a commotion that drew more into the corridor. My mom emerging, face pale with shock. Madison sprawled on the ground in her ivory gown, shrieking and flailing her limbs childishly. My dad flushed crimson with fury, my mom in tears, spectators capturing it all on their mobiles. Daniel called to the entryway, adopting an utterly baffled demeanor, rejecting all claims, insisting on evidence. How could I possibly consent to anything so twisted? He projected for all to hear. "You're attempting to sabotage her special day, lacking messages or correspondence. My parents relied solely on their assertions, and this time their assertions fell short. By the moment they were instructed to depart, the assembly had soured against them. Even kin who had remained civilly detached were appalled. They truly expected Madison to process down the path," one whispered. During Emma's nuptials, nobody could rationalize it. They exited amid a haze of chatter and snapping photos. The doorman later shared that he'd received the biggest gratuity ever and relished the assignment more than any other. Within, the party shone brightly. Attendees moved with greater energy, guffawed more robustly, as though compensating for the void my relatives had left. At last, the occasion centered on me and the partner I'd selected. At last, I didn't need to atone for merely being. That evening, in our lodging, I slipped off my heels and perched on the mattress with a portion of pastry in hand. Daniel emerged from the bath, locks wet, and noted, "You were stunning up there." I chuckled, somewhat frantically from the release. "We pulled it off," I replied. "They attempted it, yet we claimed our moment." He settled next to me and tapped his utensil to mine like a cheer. "To entrances that remain welcoming," he toasted. Ever since my parents have attempted contact, Madison dispatched a note so deranged that Daniel quipped about displaying it. She accused me of causing her disgrace, labeled him a deceitful viper, forecasted his infidelity toward me. He captured screenshots of it all and forwarded them to the kin conversation thread, including their ignored attempts, with a composed request for aid in ending the bother. My aunts and uncles united, vowing to manage it, urging us to savor our getaway. For the first time, support shifted without my effort. Occasionally, reflecting on that occasion, I skip over Madison's meltdown or my dad's scowl. Instead, I envision crossing that portal as the melody swelled and the mutters grew. Yet I advanced. I see Daniel poised, unwavering, gaze alight. I see my fingers steady. Folks often inquire whether it seemed like payback. It partially did, but beyond that, it resembled seizing back what I'd been denied. An event, a decision, an existence. We devoted years to caution, strategy, vigilance. Then, at long last, we entered our narrative. Certain days still bring regrets that my kin had been otherwise, that the veranda of that house with verdant blinds had offered gentler ground. Yet other times, I linger in our cooking space. Daniel brewing Java, illumination spilling over the surface, and I reflect, we constructed this. We shaped it from modest deeds, iterated until they took form. And on the rack over the burner, beside the seasoning, sits a tiny enclosure. Within lies a copy of Madison's note, the one branding Daniel a viper and claiming he deceived them for months. Underneath, Daniel inscribed in bold capitals, "Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss." We chuckle each glance. It's not your typical wedding snapshot that folks frame and display, but it's the one we've got.